Jill?
Hi you guys, today I'm going to be talking about how we need to have the school needs to be started at a later time. So my overall idea is that kids are not getting enough sleep due to the fact that school starts at such an early time in the morning. Some facts from the SSL Incorporation. Over 10% of high schools start before 7:30 in the morning. 43% start before 8 a.m. and 15% after 8:30. And to make it even worse, 20% of middle schools start at 7:45 in the morning or earlier. My first point is, what is the big deal? Children are tired. It causes sleep deprivation, impairs their learning ability, and being able to remember things, keeping their attention, and can start to affect their overall health. So these are things that I feel like are a really big deal. We're having these students learn. We're having them learn their basic tasks, especially starting from middle school. We're having them learn their basic daily needs and preparing them for their next step in life. But they're not getting any sleep and they're not being able to fully do the best that they can. Students need 9 hours of sleep. Reasons? Their health and their brain is developing. This is the time where their brain is learning to be able to function and use a full day. And 9 hours of sleep is what they need, but they're not getting anywhere close to that. The body isn't finished resting. When you wake up in the middle of the morning, your body's convinced that it's still the middle of the night. The process of being able to develop and remember everything you've learned and retained that day is not being retained, and it's not being remembered. The consequences of students not sleeping. Students can't reach their maximum learning ability. They won't be alert. They won't be able to pay attention. Solve everyday tasks will be a lot harder. Coping with stress is going to be a big thing, especially as a teenager. Being a teenager is probably one of the hardest times of our lives. We're asked to pick a career. We're asked to prepare ourselves for college. We're asked to do extra activities, to get a job, and to live our daily lives like everybody else. But can I just mention the fact that we're giving all of these students license? We're asking them to be awake and to be alert and drive with the rest of us. And that sounds like a lot of safety and causing a lot of effect on other people, more people than just themselves. And it's something simple as just not sleeping. This causes a significant risk for drowsy drivers. CBS News did a report due to the fact there was lots of accidents. 55% of students were more likely to crash due to the fact that they weren't getting any sleep. Students who are not getting any sleep also are very irritable, struggle with very bad depression, their poor immune systems, there's more violence, and their overall health. And let's talk about the fact that we're not going to have students who are going to use their time valuable. I understand that. Lots of students could be sleeping, but they're going to be out and they're going to be drinking and they're going to be using substances, which only makes this matter even worse. It impairs their cognitive function and decision making even worse. Especially, it's going to be even worse when you're asking them to make academic decisions and athletic decisions for their future. Students are choosing, we're not going to be able to help them choose what they want to do. But the fact that we just make it a little more easier so when they wake up in the morning, they have a little more time just to breathe, to finish school, work, and to be able to be awake when to get to school, to be fully awake and not rushing and causing risks to anybody other than themselves. Overall, I feel like for students, well-being, physically, mentally, currently, and for their future, we should start school at a later time to allow our students to grow and take time to find themselves with our support in the time of their lives. We need to look at the overall picture, that we are asking them to prepare their whole lives and make decisions about what they want to do with their whole lives. We're asking them to prepare something when in reality, we already been giving them time to fully develop their brain, and to have them make these decisions is not fair for anybody. Thank you.
high school. I wish I were back in it.
All right. Well, Allison, I know what the subject is. The claim that we need to be starting school at a later time. That's kind of a pseudo policy topic. I think that you can get away with it, but you need to be very specific about what the advantages would be. And you just kind of have a laundry list of things that you present without necessarily a very strong structure. I thought that that was the biggest problem with the presentation is it felt like you were saying the same thing several times over without necessarily having a way in which it is advancing. The material seems like it's not grouped in any particular pattern. There are a variety of issues that come up, and they come up repeatedly in the presentation instead of in some logical pattern. And so I think you need to get a firmer grip on some of the material in the structure. There is, for instance, there's a lot of assertion about all of the stress that students go through, but there's not any quantification of it. We don't have any testimony from students about the stress they're going through. You kind of assume that there's stress without demonstrating it. The places that you come to where you suggest some data on this has to do with drowsy driving and that's about it. I mean, I didn't see any information that showed that students were affected in any substantial way by the lack of sleep that they have. I think they probably are, but I didn't see any information that suggested that they were, except for instance, the brief reference to drowsy driving, and there's a little bit of information on that. There's a little bit of statistical information on that. The information about when schools start, I think that you've got that in the right place at the beginning of the speech, but where's the information that follows up about what percentage of students don't get the 9 hours of sleep that they need? I'm not sure that I heard anything that talked about that in particular. Because that schools start early, that might be one of the reasons. But then you, later on in your presentation, you kind of acknowledge that some of this is because they're out and about carousing and drinking and doing a lot of other stuff. And I'm going, so the school should change when it starts so that people who are in high school can be out later drinking so that they can sleep in the morning. That doesn't sound like a very appealing argument to somebody who is like in an administrative position and you're trying to give them a reason why they ought to change the policy. That sounds to me like it's a reason somebody ought to go to bed earlier as opposed to a reason why we ought to change when the school is operating. There might be other reasons that go along with this as well. Like I said, I think that you've got some ideas here that are important and that there could be a little bit more information on. In fact, my guess is that you've got information on these things. It just didn't get cited very clearly in the presentation. I mentioned the two things that you did give a clear citation on, and there's a lot of other stuff that I think you're treating as assumptions instead of providing us with the documentation on it, and that I think is a bit problematic. At the end of the speech, for instance, I did think that, you're going to give us kind of a review that'll organize things, and again, it didn't really follow a structure. It felt like a lot of it was repetitive again, and so I think that that's probably the main weakness that I see. I think there's an argument in here that needs to kind of put itself into a stronger format. All right, thank you.